Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Song Radio Show, Red Pill Edition. My name is Leon Jones. But before I go on to the topic, I want everybody to realize that we are now in daylight savings time. So if you didn't set your clocks, I would go ahead and set them now, particularly if you are going to work tomorrow. Now, I'm in the Eastern time zone, so the Eastern time zone carries a lot of your populated cities like New York, Baltimore, Indianapolis, Detroit, Cleveland, Philadelphia, and of course, the Western time zone, which is Pacific time. So I'm just giving you this friendly reminder because for people who don't get information or they get lazy, they may forget. And when you live in a society that we're in now, the cancel culture, you got to be on your P's and Q's and you got to pay attention to detail. And on that note, I'm going to get into the topic. This morning's topic is called the hypocrisy of feminism. The hypocrisy of feminism. Now, some of you might be asking, why is feminism involved with hypocrisy? Well, I'm a Gen Xer, or early Gen Xer. And unfortunately, the Generation X generation has been the experiment of a lot of feminist thought. A number of our African American women have jumped on board of going to school to get useless degrees. They've gotten jobs. The family structure is broken. A number of them believe in a welfare state. And you have a number of Gen X men who are also irresponsible in their decision making as well. Because when you're African American and all you've been told was you need to go to school, you need to get a degree, you need to vote Democrat, what that has done is created that hood mindset. Because you can live in a decent area, but still be hood. But when I talk about the hypocrisy of feminism, feminism is a form of Marxism. But what feminism has really turned into is a form of misandry, to where men are disrespected. And what's going on with a number of women, they've been told that they can have it all. Well, in the real world, no one can have it all because we're here for a very short time. Even if we live to 100 years old, it's impossible to have it all. And what feminism has basically created when it comes to the modern day woman is a lot of delusion. It's allowed women who are overweight to be lazy. They can go out and say, well, hey, I'm big and beautiful. When in most part, you're fat and unhealthy. It's allowed men to be sweet. be girls. This is what feminism has caused. Feminism has also caused the cancel culture because who is really offended by Aunt Jemima? Who's offended by the Washington Redskins? Who's offended when you call education indoctrination? Most of these people who are offended are modern day women. Now, is it their fault? I'm going to say no. Strap on your seatbelts because the fault comes from the men. Why? Because we allowed it to happen. You see, women are used as a buffer between the ruling class and the peasants. The problem is the ruling class who has all the money, they want to keep all the money in power. So what they do to keep the peasants from threatening them is use women as a buffer. Now, I've said this a long time ago in previous videos, but a number of people still don't understand the concept. We are getting upset with women when the competition is between the men. Because you have the men who are peasants, they're trying to take the power, and you have the men who are already in power trying to keep the power. But when I talk about the hypocrisy of feminism, you have a number of men who are calling themselves male feminists. That's an oxymoron. Now, if you want to justify feminism, you have to ask the question, why is feminism so selective? Well, that's where the hypocrisy comes to be the deception part of feminism. Because let's look at sexual allegations here. And I'm going back to men now. Tara Reid came out while Joe Biden was campaigning for president. Jennifer Flowers came out, said President Clinton, then President Clinton, raped her. But the funny thing about what happened with these women is we're the feminists. But when Bill Cosby, he was alleged of the same crime, and Jeffrey Epstein, both of those guys went to jail. Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. But in the long run, when it comes to feminism, and other women are coming out with this Cuomo allegations, and nothing has been done yet. Why? Well, if you are looking at feminism from a political standpoint, the persons that are being accused are Democrats. Now, there was another Democrat. He was having a prostitution ring. His name was, I believe it was Spitzer. Well, Spitzer had a wife. He was the governor of New York. Well, why did Spitzer's wife stay around? Spitzer's wife stayed around because Spitzer was living a good lifestyle and she enjoyed that lifestyle. And what happened to Spitzer after that? he went on to get a job at CNN. But looking at these allegations of women creating allegations against Democratic males, finds that the feminists aren't around. And this is what's funny, because when we look at dating, a number of feminists talk about equality, and this is what that second wave of feminism talked about. We can all be equal, but they really did not define equality. But see, what they did, if you're not listening, they really used equality as a substitute for equity. You see, they don't really want equality. They want different outcomes. They want the administrative assistant to actually have the same importance as the CEO. Well, they're two different jobs. One has more responsibility, one has less responsibility. So in the end, the job of an administrative assistant, it is not going to be as important as the CEO, but it is an important job, because that face and that customer service is a representative of that company. This is why when we talk about feminism, feminism has allowed some of our African American women to actually contain this masculine energy. A number of them have poor customer service skills. And I'm going to give you an example of the situations I've been in where African American women, and these are young African American women, having poor customer service skills. First of all, if you get on the phone and you ask them a question, you get very nasty. They want to hang up the phone. But you can find the worst of it when you actually go out to Walmart. I went to Popeye's Chicken last night in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the hood section of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and said, have a good night after I got my food. Person looked like they had their nose up in the air. They acted like they didn't want to interact with the customer, but they certainly took the customer's money. Had that same attitude when I went to Church's Chicken in Indianapolis, Indiana, a few months ago. And see, with this feminism out here, it's basically taking the femininity away from women. It's basically told women, and I'm talking about the modern women, because now we're in a third wave of feminism, and the third wave of feminism has basically created narcissistic monsters out here, where on one hand, this new wave of women are not afraid of men. They can get up in a man's face, they can spit on a man, but if a man attacks her, she's going to get the system, going to get the goons known as her brothers and her friends on the person that's attacking her. And when it comes to dating, feminism basically wants men to still be traditional. Want the man to spend all the money on them. And what feminism has also caused, and here's the hypocrisy, it's allowed modern women to have their say so about how they feel about men. But now when we have a standard and a belief and the type of woman that we like, and we confront the woman who is not in our league, we're ostracized. And when there's a crime, a woman creates a crime, the feminists are nowhere to be seen. They're silent. So, my question to my audience out there, men, and there are some women who come on to this page, is do you believe that feminism is hypocritical? I do. Let me give you another example. When you have jobs, particularly government jobs, most of your women have government jobs. Most of your women get custody of their children, even if they're unfit mothers. Most women are allowed to say what's on their mind. But when it comes to men, it's like we're fighting with one hand behind our back. So we can only use one hand, while a woman uses feminism as a handicap to say and feel the way she wants to feel. In fact, with this hypocrisy of feminism, it's basically created men and women today to be irresponsible people. Now, part of what's driving feminism these days as well is we have entirely too much social media out here, because there are a number of people coming here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and OnlyFans, and they're basically portraying an image that you would not see in the real world. But when it comes to feminism, do any of you women and men really know what feminism is? Or are you just running around like sheeple to be part of something that's keeping you ignorant? Again, feminism is not about equality. It's about gender supremacy through equity. In other words, feminism is very selective in how it portrays equality, because feminism doesn't hold women accountable for anything they do. But when it comes to a man, he still has to be traditional. And in the African American community, I don't hear any of these pastors talking about how bad feminism is. Why? Because in the African American community, these pastors benefit from the congregation, which is mostly women. And feminism promotes single motherhood. Feminism destroys families. Also, what's tied into feminism is the LGBTQ community. Now, why do I say that? Because both feminism and the LGBTQ community have one thing in common. They want to dismantle the patriarchy. Now, if you think about it, when it comes to patriarchy, patriarchy has a set of rules and standards. Patriarchy shames. But when it comes to matriarchy, again, turn to your nearest African American community, we know it doesn't work. Matriarchy creates the welfare state. And if you don't believe me, you have a number of women who are going to be getting big income tax checks. They're going to be getting their stimulus check. And a number of them are living in some sort of government subsidized home They're hardly paying no bills. But when they get their money, what are they going to do with it? They're going to buy hair, nails, a car, and new clothes. And if they have kids, their kids are going to look a mess because a number of them don't care about their kids. A number of them just use their kids for what they can get for their kids. And even when it comes to the foster care system, when I lived in Pennsylvania, women could get $1,500 to $2,000 per kid. Again, feminism has basically created an extortion to where women can use the system and marriage and kids to satisfy themselves. So if you've heard those examples, you know feminism doesn't create responsibility. And I know a number of us men, we complain about women not having responsibility. That's up to us to change those rules. And see, we need more men to start running for office. And this feminism will never go away when women continue to support one another. And when it comes to black men, we don't support one another. Many of us will go and support the women's channels. I mean, I have a small channel and my information is just as good as anybody else's information. But since I don't put a lot of drama on my channel, a number of black men don't want to come to this channel. And yes, my videos are pretty long. They're long because I want you to get the information. Now, I'm giving you my point of view, but I've also researched the topics. But when it comes to feminism, we are, as men, part of the blame for feminism. We've allowed it. And men, we're not doing anything to stop feminism. In fact, when you hear the term in the African American community about being an alpha male, well, an alpha male in the African American community is useless because he only thinks about his penis and how much sex he can get. He's not talking about building infrastructure. He's not talking about building a family. He's not talking about building a business. And I'm out in the street every day. And being out in the street, you can see why when I go in any urban area and some smaller areas, we have hoods and not neighborhoods because they're not men in those hoods being leaders. In fact, you want to get rid of some of these hoods and you're black? People like LeBron James, Magic Johnson, and a number of these other celebrities should utilize gentrification. Go and buy up the hoods, put businesses in the hoods, get all the riffraff out of the hoods, put nice housing in the hoods, pick up the trash in the hoods, have a substation of black police officers in the hoods, have a decent education where you have African American teachers. And I'm talking about men. And that can take care of the problem. Notice I said that can take care of the problem, but then you have to go to your mayors and your city council people who are black and corrupt themselves because they want to keep the gravy train going for themselves. But getting back to feminism, Feminism does not create equality. It never has created equality. What feminism does, it's given women an out when it comes to messages or actions that they have to be responsible for. There are a number of women who have lied about being RAPED. I'm not going to say the word here on YouTube because they may flag the video. So I spelled it out, but you know where I'm coming from. The Brian Banks. Guys have been put in jail. Guys have been murdered. Look at Romeo from the Steve Harvey show. But the feminists were nowhere around. See, again, the feminists are so misandrous, they don't care about men. They don't respect men. This is why a number of them have a masculine attitude. They think they can do everything without men, but they still want men to maintain and design and innovate infrastructure so they can be very comfortable and they can go out and say, well, we don't need a man just because they have a job. Well, in a civilized society, feminism works. Why? Because I just mentioned it. We're civilized. We're not in a theocracy like over in the Middle East. And we're not in communism like in Cuba and Venezuela. But if you think about it, a number of these feminists have that communist thinking and this cancel culture. Who's offended by boys and girls? I believe the feminists are. These are the individuals that want everybody to be the same in their mind. But in reality, nobody's the same. We're all different. But the problem with feminism is you have a number of individuals who don't know what feminism is, and you have a number of men who are also backing the feminists as well. And these feminists, to keep feminist policies going, they send a lot of money to the politicians. This is why you see a lot more women going into politics than a number of men, because women are pushing all these policies, and these policies are against masculinity and heterosexual men, particularly black men. But a number of men, they're not smart enough to see this. A number of men aren't looking around, particularly African American men in their own communities, and calling out this black pastor. I've called him out several times. This black pastor is also part of the feminist regime because he makes his money from the congregation. You look at human resources. You look at a number of your debt collectors. You look at your lawyers. A lot of these professions or jobs have women in them. Why? Because the women in these positions are involved with a lot of conflict. Again, this is why a number of women want to become lawyers, because they like to argue all the time. Even though, and I'm talking about this modern woman, even though the situation doesn't concern them. But you men out there, you need to understand that feminism is not about equality. It's about gender supremacy. This is why there are a lot of hypocrisies, and I've only named a few. Because when it comes to sexual allegations against Cuomo, why hasn't he been impeached? When it comes to sexual allegations against Joe Biden from Tara Reid, why hasn't she been heard? And with this feminism, some African American women are tying racism into it. And if you look at everything that feminism stands for, and you comprehend it, feminism is not doing men any good, and it's not doing women any good. All feminism is doing is destroying all the traditions that have made this country work. Because a civilized country needs to maintain stability, because once everything goes upside down like it is now, then you will have dysfunction. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just delivered, presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. I want you all to like these videos. You can donate as well. At the bottom of my videos, I have Cash App, PayPal, and Venmo. Now, if you're looking for some education, check me out on the Mind of STEM. On that channel, I give you a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. And when I go out in the field or go in the lab, I also perform the inspections. I'll show you how it's done. Now, I'm going to get more into this topic in depth on Blog Talk Radio. Well, my guest calling number is 215-383-5785. Now, if you cannot find me on YouTube or Blog Talk Radio, you can simply find me on Twitter, MeWe, and Parler's Back. Because in the end, again, when I talk about feminism, feminism is not about equality. It's about gender supremacy, and feminism is full of hypocrisy and misandry. But in the end, I'm going to leave you with this. Be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Please, men, understand that feminism is hurting all of us. But again, thank you for listening to this commentary, the 401 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. I want you all to have a wonderful and blessed day. God bless you. I'm out.